You being the #1 draft pick as a Knick rookie, you feel there's a certain pressure on you to exceed what people might expect?
I don't believe the expectations are very high for me coming in here because as a sophomore coming from the University of Maryland, I'm not sure too many people have heard about me or know about me.
The alleged pregnant girlfriend of a former Phoenix Suns player was murdered in 1993. The athlete's cousin continues to serve time in prison for the crime. July 22, 1993 was the last time Althea Hayes was seen alive. 2 days later, her father found her deceased in her apartment. She was shot 3 times from behind. Sadly, still to this day, her family believes more justice should have been done.
On the other side of the courtroom, the Hayes family celebrated what they say is a partial victory.
It's the beginning of a victory. It's not over.
All along, I have known he was behind this.
I don't know who's behind it. Only person I know is not behind it and didn't have anything to do with the death of this girl is my son.
Althea Hayes was 27 years old and lived in Glendale, Arizona. According to reports, Althea wanted to become a singer and moved to a different area to reach that goal. When she moved into town, she sought out for work and stumbled across the bookstore that was also a talent agency. The bookstore was owned and ran by a Phoenix Suns basketball player named Jerrod Mustaf. Jerrod was one of the most heavily recruited players in his senior year. He later went to play collegiately at the University of Maryland. After being selected by the New York Knicks in the first round, 17th overall in the 1990 NBA draft, Jerrod played in the NBA with the Knicks and the Phoenix Suns.
As the picks came down to number 17 and you heard your name mentioned.
Well, I was home in Greenbelt and around with my family. I went in the bedroom and lying down in bed, and all of a sudden I heard all this noise and everybody was screaming. And they said, New York Knicks has just picked number 17. And it was a great feeling. Everybody rushed inside to the bedroom, congratulated me.
It's hard to believe that you just lay down in bed while this was going on. This was your future. That sounds like somebody who's really very comfortable. Is that a way to describe you?
I think I'm a very level-headed person. And I had a headache the whole night, Wednesday night, and I decided to go in there and go in by myself and lie down and relax and wait for my name to get called. And that's what I did.
Under the close supervision of his father, Jerrod had used the nearly $3 million he had earned in his first 3 NBA seasons to start building a small empire. They were operating, among other things, an Afro-centric bookstore, a t-shirt company, and an entertainment production company. As his businesses started to form, he was even recognized by Sports Business, naming him Rookie of the Year. Together, they wanted to create jobs and opportunities for young African Americans. And according to Althea's mother, her daughter's interest in Jerrod was because how he gave back. She stated he wanted to help young black kids, and that's why her daughter was attracted to him. Althea was charmed by the young NBA player, and soon the two allegedly began a sexual relationship. Meanwhile, Althea's brother warned her against being seduced by a professional athlete. He used to write her letters saying, "You always been independent and you don't need him or anyone else to make it." Philip gave her those warnings without even knowing that Jerrod had a history with women. In 1989, according to the New York Times, he was involved in a physical confrontation with his girlfriend at the University of Maryland. According to a former Maryland official, Jerrod's father told him that the girlfriend was pregnant and that he had to intervene and convince the woman and her family that the abortion would be best. According to reports, Jerrod acknowledged shaking the woman. However, he said he didn't know that she was pregnant. His father also denied there was a pregnancy, although he said he did meet with the girl's mother. In 1993, assault charges were filed against him by his fiancée at the time. That dispute began when his fiancée received a letter from a woman in Florida claiming Jerrod was the father of her child. Jerrod acknowledged a confrontation had taken place, during which he said he shook her and escorted her to the door when she refused to leave. The charges were later dropped, but according to Sports Illustrated, after having another child with him, she was threatened again Wooten obtained an order of protection against him and separated. By the spring of 1993, Jerrod was seeing someone else, but his relations with Althea became more intense. According to reports, Althea would meet Jerrod at various Phoenix hotels until she told him she was pregnant. After that, she told family and friends his demeanor changed. He allegedly threatened to stop talking to her if she didn't have an abortion. Althea didn't just tell her family and friends about this threat. She also told her healthcare providers that Jerrod did not want the child and had allegedly offered to pay her $5,000 to have an abortion. Althea continued to grow frightened of her surroundings, and for good reason. After a while, she was ready to leave altogether, and on July 20th, 1993, Althea called her cousin and begged them to get her a plane ticket to get out of town. Unfortunately, Althea never received that ticket because she never got a chance to leave. After doing a wellness check, her father discovered her deceased on her apartment floor. 2 days before Althea was found at 9:23 p.m., she called a friend, Tony Evans, and told them, "Jerrod's cousin LeVonnie is over here right now, so if anything happens to me, you know who was here." LeVonnie Wooten previously worked at the bookstore owned by his cousin Jerrod with Althea. Jerrod invited his older cousin Wooten to come live with him and work for him in 1991. Wooten had recently been released from prison in North Carolina. In his mid-20s and trying to rebuild his life, he was grateful for the opportunity and a new start. But just 2 years into working together, in March of 1993, the two cousins argued at the bookstore over a bill, and Wooten claimed Jerrod hit him over the head with a phone. Officers were called, and police charged Jerrod with aggravated assault, and Wooten filed a civil action suit. He also quit working at the store and left Jerrod's residence, moving with his girlfriend, Monique, into the home of her cousin, who was a defensive tackle for the Phoenix Cardinals. But even with the drama between the two did not stay apart for very long. On July 20th, 1993, Wooten received 2 airline tickets, one for him and one for his girlfriend, Monique, to come back to Phoenix and stay at his cousin Jerrod's home with Jerrod's new girlfriend. 2 days later, a man named Alfonso, who knew the two cousins, said he saw them on the highway in Jerrod's black Porsche, which Wooten was driving. The same afternoon, Jerrod borrowed a red Mercedes convertible from a Phoenix motor company. Between 2:30 and 3 p.m. on the afternoon of July 22nd, the cousins were also seen turning into the parking lot of Althea's Glendale apartment complex. But at that time, Althea was out at lunch with her best friend Tony and didn't return to her apartment until about 5 p.m. Eventually, the cousins returned back to Jerrod's house where they had dinner. The two couples were joined by another who were also staying at the home. At some point after dinner, Wooten left the home, and according to reports, none of the occupants in the home saw him. Later that night, at around 9:30 p.m., a neighbor who lived in an apartment above Althea says he heard someone banging on the door saying, quote unquote, "It's an old friend, let me in." At a short time later, he heard the woman's voice say, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a long time." Not long after came sounds of gunfire. According to reports, 3-month pregnant Althea had been shot in the back of the head at close range and wasn't discovered until 2 days later. At about 10 o'clock, the same night of the crime, Wooten's girlfriend Monique said that she had woken up from a nap at Jerrod's house looking for her boyfriend. She said when she asked Jerrod about his cousin's whereabouts, he replied that Wooten had gone out to handle some business. When Wooten returned that night around 10:15 p.m., the girlfriend of the other couple that was home, who was studying upstairs, said she saw Wooten near Jerrod's gun closet. And then at 10:30 p.m., after hearing the door close, Monique, Wooten's girlfriend, said she went back into the living room and saw Wooten dressed in all black with a knit hat. Wooten entered the bedroom and told her to pack her belongings because they were leaving and returning to California. As the pair left the house, she allegedly watched Wooten disassemble a handgun and threw pieces out the window. Within the first 48 hours, police questioned Jerrod the day after Hayes' body was found, and they later searched his house in Chandler, which is 15 miles away from Glendale. They also flew to Maryland, where Jerrod spent part of his off-season to take hair and blood samples from him. During interviews, Jerrod did not deny being involved with Althea, but he said that she was not his girlfriend and that he never knew she was pregnant. Jerrod also denied offering her money for an abortion as well. On July 26, Wooten returned a call from the Glendale detective in charge of the investigation. Wooten at first denied knowing Althea, but then he admitted that he might have met her before. He explained to the detective that he traveled with his girlfriend to visit her cousin, who was an NFL player. Investigators also found out roughly a week after the murder, Wooten called his girlfriend to instruct her to repeat the story about visiting her cousin if the detectives were to call. During this conversation, his girlfriend was taking notes on a piece of cardboard. That cardboard was later recovered by detectives. When detectives did contact Monique, she decided to tell investigators her truth. She alleged that Wooten told her he owed Jerrod a favor, and in Phoenix, they stayed at Jerrod's home, not her cousin. Investigators continued to look deeper into this case. They also found that Wooten dropped the bookstore-related assault charge and the civil suit against his cousin. On July 22nd, the last day Althea was seen alive, Jerrod wrote a $10,000 check to purchase land in North Carolina. Wiretap phone conversations revealed that that land was supposed to be a site of a club. The former girlfriend of Jerrod's confirmed that his cousin Wooten was going to be the manager of that said club. Ultimately, on April 8, 1994, after a 9-month investigation, Wooten was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, burglary, and witness tampering. Before the trial even started, Jerrod spent time trying to prove his innocence in the media. He was upset with the Sun, police, and the news. The 23-year-old at the time said that the police were embarrassing him and harassing his friends, and he claimed the Suns never supported him during his 2 seasons there. On the other hand, while his cousin was in jail preparing for his case, he assumed he would be released and set free like OJ, according to reports. Another wild turn in this story is while Wooten was in jail, Althea's nephew, Vernon Williams, was placed in the same cell with Wooten, and before that, he was placed in the cell with a quote-unquote professional snitch. It was alleged by her nephew that he was boasting about the crime in jail. Eventually, Wooten's lawyer, Eleanor Miller, took this up with the judge. Miller claimed that giving him these cellmates were being done on purpose in hopes that he would fold. She said the state really wanted Jerrod on trial and tried everything possible to get Wooten to slip up and say something. However, the officials claimed that it was simply an error, made changes in the housing, and moved forward with the trial.
Both sides argued Mustaf wanted Hayes dead. She refused to abort the athlete's child.
The case was tried to a jury in January 1996. During the trial, the state and Wooten's defense claimed that the mastermind behind all of this was Jerrod.
Mustaf invoked his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself, and the judge excused him from testifying. The prosecution's case rested primarily on the testimony of this protected witness, who said Wooten showed her the murder weapon.
But Wooten's lawyer said that he had been set up. They claimed that another member of Jerrod's entourage was likely the triggerman. The defense also argued that there were no witnesses to the incident, no real physical evidence, and no indication that investigators had pursued other suspects.
There's not a fingerprint, there's not a hair sample, there's not a blood sample that can put him to this case.
Lachey Evans has a child by Mustaf and knows both men well.
I don't know whether Jerrod was behind it. All I know is about LeVonnie Wooten. My concern is not with Jerrod. My concern is with LeVonnie Wooten.
I know my son is not guilty.
The police has been very unfair in this case.
I know him well enough to know that he couldn't have done anything like this.
All in all, the trial lasted up to 2 weeks and received interesting little to no media coverage given the connection to a pro athlete. Nonetheless, on January 29, 1996, 2 years after Wooten was arrested, a jury found him guilty on all counts. Wooten was sentenced to life for murder, 21 years for burglary, and nearly 2 years for witness tampering. Wooten was spared the death penalty. His cousin Jerrod was not present during the trial.
On oath to find the defendant, LeVonnie Wooten, guilty of count 1, murder first degree.
The verdicts brought no reaction from LeVonnie Wooten till he walked from the courtroom. He smiled, waved, and yelled peace.
Both the murder of Althea and the fate of Jerrod still weighed heavily on the family. Barbara, who was Althea's sister, she never recovered and passed away in 1998. The family was convinced she died of grief. Her mother, Hazel Hayes, would frequently visit the cemetery where her daughter was buried. Years after Althea's death, her mother would still break into tears, sad about the loss of her daughter and her grandchild. Hazel Hayes also died in 2005. According to Althea's brother, he said, "My mother was a strong woman, but what happened to Althea, that took so much from her." After all the tragedy, Alvin Hayes tries to avoid the topic. He resumed his life as best as he knew how. The family did settle a wrongful death lawsuit against Jerrod, which is sealed with the court. This case also weighed heavy on Eleanor Miller, who was the attorney for Wooten. When Wooten retained her, it marked her first capital murder case. She said that it was a jarring and scarring experience. At some point after the trial, Miller heard through a mutual friend that Althea's family had endured a home fire and was in need of some furniture, and she donated to the family. Miller continued her defense work until 2015, when she retired from practicing law. But after representing Wooten, she actively avoided other capital cases. She said it was more of a burden than she was comfortable shouldering. After avoiding prosecution for murder, his pro career came to an end. He played for a few years overseas, but soon after he returned to the Maryland suburbs in the early 2000s. He devoted his life to public service and helping African American kids avoid the criminal justice system. However, his problems with women continued. According to Sports Illustrated, he has about 8 children, and in February of 2021, he was charged with second-degree assault for allegedly attacking his wife. Court records did show that the charges were dropped when she did not show up for a hearing. However, the couple divorced in 2003. LeVonnie Wooten maintains that he was wrongly accused and convicted. He claims that he was investigated by a crooked cop and received ineffective counsel. He said that the majority of the jury pool was non-black. He also speculates that both the Suns and their well-connected president allegedly played a role in the case due to the publicity of having a stain on their players. Wooten also said that he harbors no hard feelings for Monique, his ex-girlfriend that testified against him. According to him, she was faced with the choices of cooperating with the prosecution or risking losing her kids, and in his eyes, she made an understandable choice. As regards to his cousin, Jerrod, Wooten has remained loyal to him. He said that that's his family, and blood is forever.